Admiral Krelax of the Zoranian Stellar Concordance had seen countless species and their primitive attempts at technological simulation. His crystalline eyes, capable of perceiving spectrums far beyond human vision, narrowed with a mixture of boredom and mild contempt as he observed the human child through the advanced holographic monitoring system. The child, a human female no more than 8 standard cycles old, sat cross-legged on a worn fabric surface, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface that flickered with an antiquated Starship simulation. To Krelax, it appeared to be nothing more than a crude entertainment device, the kind of simplistic training tool that would be discarded by even the most junior cadet in the Zoranian military academies. Emma Rodriguez didn't notice the alien observation. Her world had narrowed to the holographic display, a complex Starship simulator that her parents, both aerospace engineers, had custom developed. What looked like a game was actually a highly sophisticated training program, disguised as entertainment to keep her engaged and learning. The simulation's interface was deceptively simple. Soft blue and green holograms danced around her fingers, representing star systems, ship trajectories, and complex gravitational interactions. To the untrained eye, it might have seemed like nothing more than a child's plaything. To Krelax, it was about to become something far more intriguing. At first, the Admiral's attention wandered. His species had long ago mapped most of the known galactic trade routes, developed quantum navigation systems that could predict stellar movements centuries in advance, and created AI interfaces that could manage entire fleet movements with microscopic precision. What could a human child possibly understand about stellar navigation? But something caught his attention. A subtle movement, a series of calculations that seemed almost deliberate. Emma's hand moved with a precision that belied her age. She was navigating a simulated starship through a particularly challenging asteroid field, a scenario that would challenge even seasoned Zoranian navigators. Her fingers traced complex paths, making micro-adjustments that seemed to anticipate gravitational fluctuations before they occurred. Krelax leaned closer to the holographic display, his translator implant automatically filtering and analyzing the child's interactions. The simulation wasn't just a preset scenario. It was adaptive, responding to her decisions in real time, presenting increasingly complex challenges that most children would find overwhelming. A standard warning beacon would have triggered most navigation systems to retreat. Emma instead saw it as an invitation. Her fingers danced across quantum trajectory calculations, finding a path that most advanced AI systems would have deemed impossible. She was playing, yes, but it was a form of play that spoke to something deeper, an intuitive understanding of spatial dynamics that suggested something extraordinary. The Admiral's initial dismissiveness began to crack. This wasn't just a child playing a game. This was something else entirely. What Krelax didn't know, what he was about to discover, was that this simulator was no ordinary educational tool. Developed by cutting-edge human researchers who understood that the best learning happened through engagement, the program was designed to teach complex spatial reasoning, strategic thinking, and adaptive problem-solving. Emma continued her navigation, utterly unaware that an alien admiral was watching her with growing fascination. To her, this was just another afternoon, another chance to explore the fascinating world of space navigation that her parents had introduced her to. Little did she know that her simple game was about to change everything the Zoranian Stellar Concordance understood about human potential. Admiral Krelax initiated a deep scan protocol, a complex neural interface that allowed him to analyze the human child's simulation with unprecedented detail. What had begun as a casual observation was quickly transforming into a rigorous scientific investigation. The simulator's underlying architecture defied his initial expectations. Each pixel, each quantum calculation was a deliberate construct, not just a random collection of graphical elements, but a meticulously designed educational tool that adapted in real time to the user's cognitive processes. Emma's fingers continued their dance across the holographic interface, unaware of the profound analysis happening around her. The simulation had entered a new phase, a complex scenario involving multiple gravitational bodies, trade route optimization, and potential conflict zones. To the casual observer, it might have looked like an elaborate game. To Krelax, it was becoming something far more significant. The Zoranian neural analysis systems began breaking down the simulation's core algorithms. What they discovered was nothing short of revolutionary. The program wasn't simply presenting challenges. It was dynamically generating scenarios based on the user's previous decisions, creating a learning environment that was simultaneously a test, a teaching tool, and a predictive model. Emma's approach was particularly fascinating. Where Zoranian training systems relied on rigid, predetermined decision trees, this human simulation embraced complexity and uncertainty. She didn't just follow preset protocols, she anticipated, adapted, and innovated. A particularly challenging segment of the simulation caught Krelax's attention. The scenario presented a complex diplomatic incident involving 3 different star systems, each with unique gravitational constraints and potential conflict triggers. Most advanced military training systems would provide a limited set of predefined responses. Emma's simulator did something entirely different. It presented multiple layers of potential outcomes, each branching into increasingly complex scenarios. The child wasn't just being tested on her ability to follow instructions. She was being taught to think, to anticipate, to understand the nuanced interactions of stellar politics and physics. Krelax's translation implant began to parse the underlying mathematical models. The simulation's core was built on principles that merged quantum mechanics, diplomatic strategy, resource management, and predictive modeling. It was a training system that defied traditional categorization, part game, part educational tool, part advanced strategic simulator. The most shocking revelation came when the Admiral realized the simulation was teaching more than just technical skills. It was instilling fundamental problem-solving approaches, encouraging lateral thinking, risk assessment, and adaptive strategy. Each decision Emma made wasn't just about navigating a virtual starship. It was about understanding complex systems, anticipating potential outcomes, and making nuanced choices. Zoranian training systems had always been linear, hierarchical, designed to create perfect adherence to established protocols. This human simulator did something radically different. It celebrated uncertainty. It rewarded creative thinking. It transformed learning from a rigid process into an exploratory journey. Emma remained blissfully unaware of the alien scrutiny. To her, this was simply an afternoon of fun, a chance to explore the fascinating world her parents had introduced her to. She pressed forward, her small fingers making micro-adjustments, finding paths that no predetermined algorithm could have predicted. The Admiral's initial dismissiveness had completely evaporated. What he was witnessing was not just a child's game. It was a window into a fundamentally different approach to learning, strategy, and understanding complex systems. Something extraordinary was happening, and Krelax was about to discover that humanity was far more dangerous and far more fascinating than the Zoranian stellar concordance had ever imagined. The Zoranian research protocols demanded a comprehensive investigation. Admiral Krelax began tracing the origins of the simulator, a task that would prove far more complex than he had anticipated. What appeared to be a simple educational tool was rapidly revealing itself as a profound expression of human cognitive engineering. Initial data retrieval focused on the simulator's technical specifications. The program was developed by a small research collective, a startup founded by 2 human parents who were both aerospace engineers. This alone challenged Zoranian assumptions about technological innovation. In their culture, advanced technological development was the strict domain of centralized research institutions with millennia of established protocols. Emma's parents, Dr. Maria Rodriguez and Dr. David Chen, had created something revolutionary. The simulator wasn't just a product. It was a philosophy of learning disguised as a children's game. Their research papers, which Krelax now accessed through the Global Information Network, revealed a radical approach to education that sent tremors through his understanding of technological development. The core principle was devastatingly simple yet profound. Learning should be engaging, adaptive, and fundamentally enjoyable. Where Zornian educational systems viewed learning as a rigid hierarchical process of information transfer, these humans saw it as an exploratory journey. The simulator was designed to make complex concepts intuitive, to transform challenge into play. Deeper investigation revealed layers of complexity that defied conventional categorization. The program used advanced machine learning algorithms that adapted to each individual user's cognitive patterns. It wasn't just teaching, it was learning alongside the child, constantly evolving, constantly adjusting its approach. Cultural databases provided additional context. Humans had a long history of using play as a primary learning mechanism. From early childhood educational models to complex professional training simulations, they approached learning as an adaptive, creative process. This stood in stark contrast to the Zornian model of knowledge transmission, which viewed learning as a precise, almost surgical process of information implantation. The simulator Emma was using was just the tip of an enormous technological and cultural iceberg. Krelax discovered entire ecosystems of human educational technologies that challenged everything his civilization understood about knowledge transfer. Simulation-based learning, adaptive educational platforms, gamified training systems. These were not novelties, but fundamental approaches deeply integrated into human society. What truly shocked the Admiral was the underlying philosophy. Humans didn't just seek to transfer information. They sought to inspire curiosity, to encourage exploration, to make learning an intrinsically motivating experience. The simulator wasn't just teaching technical skills. It was cultivating a mindset of continuous learning, of embracing complexity, of finding joy in intellectual challenge. Emma continued to play, utterly unaware of the profound technological and cultural analysis happening around her. To her, this was simply fun, a way to explore the universe her parents had introduced her to. Her fingers moved with an intuitive grace, making decisions that seemed to flow from an understanding deeper than mere calculation. The research team's original design documents revealed their core belief that the best learning happens when the learner doesn't realize they're learning. Each scenario in the simulator was a carefully crafted narrative, a problem to be solved, a world to be explored. Technical skills, strategic thinking, spatial reasoning, all were woven into an experience that felt like pure play. Krelax's initial mission of casual observation had transformed into something else entirely. What he was witnessing was not just a technological artifact, but a window into a fundamentally different approach to knowledge, learning, and human potential. The Zornian Stellar Concordance was about to receive a report that would challenge everything they understood about technological and cultural development. And it all began with a human child, a Starship simulator, and an afternoon of play. The psychological analysis module of Krelax's monitoring system began to compile a comprehensive profile of human cognitive processing, with Emma Rodriguez as its primary subject of study. What had begun as a casual observation was now a full-scale investigation into the fundamental nature of human intelligence. The simulator entered a new phase, a scenario of unprecedented complexity that would have overwhelmed most advanced military training systems. Multiple conflicting objectives appeared simultaneously: resource management, diplomatic negotiations, potential conflict zones, and unexpected stellar phenomena. To the Zornian understanding, such a scenario would require multiple specialized teams, extensive computational support, and carefully coordinated decision-making protocols. Emma processed the information differently. Her approach was not linear but holistic. Where Zornian strategic thinking followed rigid decision trees, she approached the problem as an interconnected ecosystem of possibilities. Each decision was not just a tactical choice, but part of a broader, more intuitive understanding of systemic interactions. Krelax watched in growing fascination as the child's cognitive processes revealed themselves. The neural mapping systems detected something extraordinary, a form of pattern recognition that transcended traditional computational models. Emma wasn't simply solving the problem. She was reimagining the entire strategic landscape. A diplomatic scenario emerged within the simulation. 3 star systems, each with complex political motivations, stood on the brink of potential conflict. Standard military protocols would suggest a series of carefully measured diplomatic interventions, each step calculated to minimize potential escalation. Emma's approach was radically different. She identified the underlying motivations of each stellar civilization, not through direct confrontation, but through a series of indirect, almost intuitive maneuvers. Resources were repositioned, communication channels subtly altered, potential conflict points carefully diffused through what could only be described as strategic empathy. The Zornian psychological analysis systems struggled to categorize her decision-making process. It wasn't purely rational, nor was it emotional in the traditional sense. It was something more fluid, more adaptive, a form of intelligence that seemed to anticipate potential outcomes before they could be computationally predicted. Most shocking was her ability to create solutions that didn't just resolve the immediate conflict, but fundamentally transformed the underlying systemic tensions. Where traditional strategic thinking saw conflict as a zero-sum game, Emma's approach suggested alternative paths, collaborative solutions that benefited multiple parties in ways that defied conventional strategic modeling. The simulator responded to her decisions with increasing complexity, presenting more challenging scenarios that would have crushed the cognitive capabilities of most advanced military training systems. Yet Emma remained calm, her fingers moving with a mixture of playful exploration and deep strategic insight. Krellex's translation implants began to decode the deeper language of her decision-making. It wasn't about winning or losing in the traditional sense. It was about understanding, about finding pathways of least resistance, about transforming potential conflicts into opportunities for collaborative growth. The psychological profile that emerged was nothing short of revolutionary. Humans, it seemed, possessed a form of cognitive flexibility that defied traditional understanding of intelligence. Their strength lay not in rigid computational power, but in their ability to reimagine possibilities, to find solutions that existed outside established paradigms. Emma continued to play, utterly unaware of the profound analysis surrounding her. To her, this was simply an afternoon of exploration, a chance to solve interesting puzzles, to explore fascinating worlds. The Zornian Stellar Concordance was about to receive a report that would fundamentally challenge everything they understood about intelligence, strategy, and the nature of problem-solving. And it all stemmed from a human child, a Starship simulator, and an afternoon of seemingly innocent play. The technological breakthrough became evident precisely 17 minutes and 32 seconds into Emma's latest simulation run. Admiral Krellex's advanced neural interface systems began to overheat, a rare occurrence that spoke volumes about the unprecedented nature of what he was witnessing. The Starship simulator had transitioned from a simple educational tool to something far more profound, a living, breathing ecosystem of technological innovation that challenged every fundamental principle of Zornian computational understanding. Emma's fingers moved with an almost musical precision, her small hands dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe and respond to her touch. The simulation had long since moved beyond predefined scenarios. It was now generating entirely new computational models in real time, adapting and evolving with each of the child's decisions. The Zornian technological archives contained millennia of advanced computational research. Their most sophisticated AI systems required entire planetary computational networks to generate even moderately complex predictive models. This human child was doing something fundamentally different, creating adaptive solutions that emerged from an intuitive understanding rather than pure computational power. A critical moment occurred when the simulation presented a scenario involving multiple simultaneous stellar phenomena, gravitational anomalies, quantum instabilities, and complex interstellar diplomatic tensions. Where standard military simulations would require extensive preprocessing, and multiple specialized teams, Emma approached the challenge with a holistic creativity that defied conventional logic. Her solution wasn't just innovative, it was transformative. She didn't simply navigate the complex scenario. She reimagined its fundamental parameters. The simulator responded by generating entirely new computational pathways, creating a feedback loop of innovation that was both terrifying and beautiful. Krillex's translation and analysis systems struggled to categorize what they were observing. This wasn't just problem-solving. It was a form of technological symbiosis that suggested humans viewed technology not as a tool, but as a living, adaptive ecosystem. The deeper analysis revealed something even more shocking. The simulator wasn't just teaching, it was learning. Each of Emma's interactions generated new algorithmic possibilities, expanding the system's capabilities in ways that no predetermined programming could have anticipated. It was a form of technological evolution that the Zoranian scientists had believed impossible. Comparative studies showed the fundamental difference. Zoranian technological development was hierarchical, linear, carefully controlled. Human technological innovation, as embodied in this simple simulator, was organic, adaptive, almost alive. It didn't just solve problems. It transformed the very nature of problem-solving. The simulation entered a phase of extraordinary complexity. Multiple layers of potential outcomes began to emerge, each more intricate than the last. Emma remained calm, her approach a mixture of childlike curiosity and deep strategic insight. She wasn't fighting the complexity, she was dancing with it, finding pathways of least resistance that no computational system could have predicted. Most alarming to the Zoranian analysis was the speed of innovation. What would take their most advanced research teams decades to develop was happening in real time, through the intuitive interactions of a human child playing what appeared to be a simple game. The technological implications were staggering. This wasn't just a simulator. It was a living proof of concept, a demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to technological development, to learning, to understanding the very nature of complex systems. Emma continued to play, utterly unaware of the revolutionary analysis happening around her. To her, this was simply an afternoon of exploration, a chance to solve interesting puzzles and explore fascinating worlds. The Zoranian Stellar Concordance was about to receive a report that would shake the foundations of their understanding of technological innovation. And it all began with a human child, a Starship simulator, and an afternoon of seemingly innocent play. The Zoranian High Council convened an emergency session, a rare occurrence that had only happened 3 times in the last millennium. Admiral Krillex's preliminary report on the human child and her simulator had triggered a level of collective anxiety that threatened to fracture the carefully maintained diplomatic protocols of the Stellar Concordance. Holographic projections filled the council chamber, displaying every nuanced detail of Emma's interactions with the simulator. What had begun as a casual observation had transformed into the most significant intelligence assessment in recent galactic history. Counselor Vexera, the most senior member of the Technological Assessment Committee, spoke first. Her crystalline form flickered with barely contained agitation. The implications are beyond anything we've encountered. This is not merely a technological anomaly. This is a fundamental reimagining of strategic thinking. The simulation that had so captivated Krillex now played out for the entire council. Each decision Emma made was a masterclass in adaptive strategy. Where traditional military thinking saw conflict as a binary proposition, win or lose, she demonstrated an approach that was fluid, dynamic, almost organic in its complexity. A particularly tense scenario unfolded. 3 star systems, each with conflicting resource claims and deep-seated historical tensions, stood on the brink of total war. Standard Zoranian diplomatic protocols would have involved extensive negotiation, careful resource allocation, and potentially military intervention. Emma's approach was revolutionary. She didn't solve the conflict. She transformed it. By identifying the underlying motivations of each civilization, she proposed a series of collaborative solutions that turned potential conflict into mutual opportunity. Resources were redistributed, communication channels were opened, and historical tensions were addressed not through force, but through a deep understanding of systemic interconnectedness. The council members watched in stunned silence. "This is not a child," Krelax reported, his neural interfaces projecting detailed psychological and strategic analyses. "This is a living demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to intelligence, to conflict resolution, to understanding complex systems." The diplomatic implications were staggering. Humans had developed a form of strategic thinking that was simultaneously more nuanced and more powerful than any known galactic civilization. They didn't seek to dominate or control. They sought to understand, to collaborate, to find solutions that transcended traditional zero-sum thinking. Councillor Vexera's next words sent a tremor through the chamber. "We are not looking at a potential threat. We are looking at a potential evolutionary leap in galactic intelligence." The simulator continued to generate scenarios of increasing complexity. Each one demonstrated the same core principle, an approach to problem-solving that was adaptive, empathetic, and fundamentally transformative. It wasn't about defeating an opponent. It was about understanding the entire system, finding pathways that benefited all parties. Political strategists, military commanders, diplomatic experts, all found themselves confronted with a mode of thinking that defied their most fundamental assumptions. The human child was doing something that entire civilizations had failed to achieve, creating solutions that were genuinely collaborative, that saw beyond immediate conflict to long-term systemic harmony. "We must learn," Krelax stated, his voice cutting through the council's mounting tension, "not to defend against this, but to understand it." Emma Rodriguez continued to play, utterly unaware of the galactic scale analysis surrounding her afternoon of exploration. To her, this was simply a game, a chance to solve interesting puzzles, to explore fascinating worlds. The Zoranian stellar concordance stood at a crossroads. Everything they understood about intelligence, strategy, and potential was about to be fundamentally challenged. And it all began with a human child, a Starship simulator, and an afternoon of seemingly innocent play. The first official contact came 3 standard galactic cycles after Admiral Krelax's initial observation. It was not a military delegation, not a diplomatic mission, but a singular request that would reshape the understanding of interstellar relations. Dr. Maria Rodriguez received the transmission in her home laboratory, her daughter Emma playing nearby with an updated version of the simulator. The Zoranian communication was unlike any diplomatic approach humanity had ever encountered. Not a formal declaration, not a threat, but a profound request for understanding. "We wish to learn," the transmission read, stripped of diplomatic pretense, "not to conquer, not to negotiate, simply to understand." The background investigation had been exhaustive. The Zoranian stellar concordance had analyzed every aspect of Emma's simulator, of her parents' research, of the broader human approach to learning and problem-solving. What they discovered challenged every fundamental assumption of their millennia-old civilization. Emma's simulator was more than a technological artifact. It was a philosophical statement about the nature of intelligence, of learning, of potential. Dr. Rodriguez understood the significance immediately. Her background in cognitive engineering and adaptive systems had always suggested that human learning was fundamentally different. Not linear, but organic. The Zoranian request was the ultimate validation of a philosophy she had championed for years. The first joint research station was established in neutral stellar space, a collaborative effort that defied every previous model of interstellar cooperation. Human researchers, led by Maria and David Rodriguez, worked alongside Zoranian scientists who approached the project with a combination of scientific rigor and what could only be described as intellectual humility. Emma, now 9 years old, became an unexpected key to the collaboration. Her ability to intuitively understand complex systems, to see connections that traditional computational models missed, made her more than a subject of study. She became a bridge between civilizations. The simulator evolved. No longer just an educational tool, it transformed into a collaborative platform that merged Zornian computational precision with human adaptive thinking. Each interaction became a mutual learning experience, breaking down barriers that had seemed insurmountable. Krillax, now the primary liaison for the Zornian research team, discovered something profound. Human intelligence wasn't about raw computational power or strategic domination. It was about adaptability, about seeing potential where others saw only obstacles. The research station became a beacon of a new form of interstellar cooperation. Traditional models of diplomatic and technological exchange gave way to something more fluid, more alive. It wasn't about sharing technology. It was about sharing ways of thinking, of understanding, of perceiving the universe. Emma's parents watched with a mixture of pride and wonder. What had begun as a simple educational simulator had become a catalyst for a fundamental reimagining of interstellar intelligence. Their daughter's intuitive approach to problem-solving was reshaping entire civilizations. The Zornian understood now what they had initially missed. Humanity's strength wasn't in its technological might or military potential. It was in its ability to reimagine possibilities, to find connection where others saw only division, to transform challenges into opportunities of mutual growth. As the research station pulsed with collaborative energy, Emma continued to play. To her, it was still just a fascinating game. A chance to explore, to solve interesting puzzles, to understand the fascinating worlds around her. The universe watched and learned. What had begun with a child, a simulator, and an afternoon of play was now rewriting the fundamental understanding of intelligence, of potential, of what it meant to truly connect across the vast, mysterious expanse of space. 50 standard cycles had passed since that first remarkable afternoon, when an alien admiral watched a human child play a Starship simulator. The universe had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The collaborative research station, now known as the Rodriguez-Krillax Nexus, stood as a testament to a new era of galactic understanding. What had begun as a simple observation had reshaped the fundamental principles of interstellar cooperation, intelligence, and potential. Emma Rodriguez, now a lead researcher and philosopher of interstellar cognitive systems, stood at the heart of the station. Her childhood simulator, preserved in a holographic museum, remained a symbol of a revolutionary approach to understanding complexity. The Zornian stellar concordance had undergone a complete philosophical transformation. Their millennia-old hierarchical systems of knowledge and governance had been dismantled, replaced by adaptive, collaborative frameworks that celebrated diversity of thought. Humanity had not conquered them. They had invited them to reimagine everything they understood about intelligence. It was never about technology. Emma would often say during her lectures to mixed human and alien audiences, it was about perspective, about seeing connections where others saw boundaries. The simulator that had started everything had evolved into something far more profound. It was now a living network of collaborative intelligence, a platform that connected multiple civilizations, allowing them to solve complex universal challenges through shared understanding. Climate restoration, stellar engineering, interdimensional communication, all had become collaborative endeavors that transcended traditional notions of competition. Admiral Krillax, now a venerated philosopher-scientist, stood beside her. Their partnership represented more than a collaboration between species. It was a living demonstration of the principles that had reshaped galactic civilization. "We misunderstood intelligence," Krillax would reflect during their joint presentations. "We thought it was about computation, about power. Humanity showed us it's about adaptation, about seeing potential in complexity." The technologies that emerged from this collaboration were nothing short of miraculous. Quantum communication networks that could predict and prevent conflicts before they emerge. Adaptive environmental restoration systems that could heal entire planetary ecosystems. Educational platforms that transformed learning from a rigid process to a dynamic, collaborative journey. Humanity had not become a dominant galactic civilization through military might or technological superiority. They had ascended by offering a fundamentally different way of understanding existence, a perspective that saw connection where others saw division, that found opportunity in complexity, that transformed challenges into collaborative possibilities. The original simulator, the simple game that had started everything, remained a sacred artifact. Researchers from hundreds of civilizations would study its elegant simplicity, its revolutionary approach to understanding. It was more than a technological tool. It was a philosophical statement about the nature of intelligence, of potential, of what it means to truly connect. Emma often thought back to that afternoon, to a child playing a game, unaware of the profound implications of her curiosity. The universe, she realized, was not a place to be conquered or controlled. It was a complex, interconnected system waiting to be understood, to be explored, to be appreciated. As she looked out at the vast stellar network, a living, breathing ecosystem of collaborative intelligence, she smiled. What had begun as an afternoon of play had transformed everything. The universe watched, learned, and continued to evolve.